So, ladies and gentlemen, anybody who might be out there listening to us, I don't know who you might be, but I am Alan Butler. My good friend Ron is with me again today, and we are ready to do some stuff in the book of Acts. Last time we were talking about Pentecost, the results of Pentecost, and those people talking in tongues, and people hearing the mighty works of God in their own language, and then all these people getting together and having all their possessions in common. And now we're moving on to chapter 3, where Peter and John are going to the temple. And there's something I'm going to bring out right here. Let's read through just the first couple of verses here. It says, "Now Peter and John were going up to the temple at the 9th hour, the hour of prayer." Now this is a curious phrase, okay, and some people overlook this rather rapidly without even thinking about it. There's a big debate in Christianity about what to do with a Jewish temple, Jewish temple service. And we've been led to believe in a lot of ways that all of that temple service is dead, done, nailed to the cross, however you want to put it. So then why did Peter and John, immediately after Yeshua's death, while they were still hanging around in Jerusalem, why did they go to the temple at the hour of prayer as prescribed? At 9 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon are the daily prayers and sacrifices in the temple. So it's just a curious thing to consider there. And I don't pretend to know. The temple service is very complex, and a lot of different things, a lot of different sacrifices in a lot of different ways for very different things. A lot of people have the impression that going to the temple and offering a sacrifice to God, a lamb or a dove or what, you've heard those scriptures, that this is somehow you're bringing an animal to the temple to be killed to make atonement for your sin. Right. And that's not the case at all. There was you would never go, an individual would never go to the temple with an animal and have it sacrificed on their behalf to have their sins covered. That never ever happened. There were guilt offerings and just offerings. This is my gift to God. God says, you want to join my table, you want to come and worship me, here's how you do it. This is the rules of my table. The altar is God's table. You want to eat with me, this is the way you have to do it. You can't put an unclean animal on my table. You can't kill that animal in a cruel and unusual way if you're going to eat it at my table. You can't eat blood. We don't eat blood if you're going to eat at my table. And it must be this type of animal. It must be a clean animal. It must be less than 1 year old. It can have no blemishes. Don't send me a crooked teeth, popped eyes hanging out, and a broken leg donkey that you're going to sacrifice to me. That ain't going to fly. That's an abomination. And it has to be an acceptable sacrifice. And so these people are just giving gifts. Now there is on the Day of Atonement, the high priest on one day of the year would go into the most holy place, that the inner temple, the inner sanction, where the Ark of the Covenant was. He's only allowed to go into there one day out of the year to make a sacrifice for the people of Israel, all of them. This is not an individual.
Was it one animal?
Forgiveness of our sin. It's one animal.
Just one animal.
One animal.
For all of the people.
For all of the people. The scapegoat. You've heard the scapegoat?
The scapegoat.
This is when this happens.
That makes sense.
One goat has all of the sins of all the people placed on the goat, and then it's driven off into the desert, never to be seen from again. The other goat is sacrificed as a sin covering, and that is, the high priest does that only once a year. And as a matter of fact, when he goes in there, they tie a rope around his foot in case he gets stricken dead while he's there. And it has happened because he didn't do something the right way. He forgot to offer the incense. I mean, if you try to speak to God without the incense being fully covering the glory of over the Ark of the Covenant, it will kill you. That's why they had to burn incense, and lots of it, to create clouds of smoke over the altar and over the Ark of the Covenant. Because if God's presence comes down on that one time of the year to interact with that priest, and that whole thing is not shrouded in mist and smoke, it will kill you. And so they would, if that guy didn't come back, they'd just pull him out on a rope, and he was dead. And they had to do it again next year.
Wow.
So, but there's a lot of misconceptions about the temple service and what Christians think about it. And I do know for a fact that when Christ returns, there will be a temple. And there will be sacrifices in the temple. And those feasts of our God that are listed in the Old Testament will be reinstituted. And it says that there are, of course, 7 festivals of God, and 3 of them are pilgrimage festivals where you have to travel to the holy city of God on that occasion. And it says in the book of Revelation that any nation who does not send a representative to the temple at least once a year on those days, they'll get no rain on their whole country until the following year. Egypt has a special one because they don't get rain in Egypt very much. So he says if you don't, I totally spaced it now. What was going to happen to Egypt? He made it an additional thing.
Like a clause.
You guys don't get rain, so it's not.
You're desert people anyway. So.
Exactly. So there's like a little clause in there that says if you don't send somebody up, this other thing is going to happen to you. So we know that this temple service is going to be reinstituted, and it's pretty clear in all of the prophets and in the book of Revelation. So what does that mean to us now? I'm not ready to address that because I frankly don't know. But what I do know is that Peter and John were still going to the temple right after Yeshua died. So they still felt a need to do that for whatever reason. They're still stuck.
Then at the 9th hour, it says. So that would have been
the morning.
3. Well, it says 3 in the afternoon.
Oh, 3 in the afternoon is the 9th hour. Yes, excuse me.
Because I guess the morning would start at 6 a.m. then.
Right, when the sun comes up.
Yeah.
Right. So you are correct. They went to the afternoon prayers at the temple. And we'll continue on now in verse 2. And a man who had been lame from his mother's womb was being carried along, whom they used to set down every day at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful. They're the Beautiful Gate, in order to beg alms of those who were entering the temple. When he saw Peter and John about to go into the temple, he was asking them to receive alms. But Peter, along with John, fixing his gaze on him, said, "Look at us." And he began to give them his attention, expecting to receive something from them. But Peter said, "I do not possess silver and gold, but what I do have I give to you. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, the Netzarim, walk." And raising him by the right hand, he raised him up, and immediately his feet and his ankles were straightened. With a leap he stood up upright and began to walk, and he entered the temple with them, walking and leaping and praising God. And all the people saw him walking and praising God, and they were taking note of him as being the one who used to sit at the beautiful gate of the temple to beg alms. And they were filled with wonder and amazement at what had happened to him. Did you say anything about him being 40?
No.
That's curious. It was one of the things that was so curious about them, and they all were kind of puzzling about it, was that this guy he was over 40 years old and had been crippled from his mother's womb.
Yeah.
So this is an example, okay, and I'm going to kind of back this up here just a little bit, okay. Back in the Old Testament, Moses was getting overrun by just the people. There's just too many of them with too many problems and too many things that he can't handle all himself. And they were crying against Moses and complaining, and God went to Moses and said, "You just kill me, man. I can't handle all these people by myself." So God said, "Gather 70 elders of the people, members of the leaders of thousands and 10,000s. Find righteous men throughout Israel to represent the 12 tribes, 70 of them. And I will take of the spirit that I have put on you, and I will transfer some of it to them, so that they can go out into the people and serve the people like you have, and they'll be your helpers." It's interesting that Yeshua did exactly the same thing. He called together 70 of his disciples, and he sent them out in his power, exactly like Moses had done. And here we have another example of how this new prophet, Yeshua, is just like Moses. And we're about to hear Peter explain to all these people, and all the chief priests and all the elders and scribes and the Sadducees and the Pharisees all came together to tell these guys, shut up, stop preaching. And so Peter gives them a sermon, and in which he talks about how Moses is the one who promised that there would be another prophet coming who was like him. Now, what's the unique thing about Moses as opposed to any of the other prophets? Can you think of anything?
Well, Moses spoke directly to God.
That is exactly right. Moses spoke to God face to face. He heard from God directly. All of the other prophets received the word of the Lord through visions, dreams, waking visions, all kinds of different things. And none of them spoke to God directly and knew the mind of God like Moses did. And that's why Moses said to the people of Israel, I'm about to die, I'm not going into the promised land. The Lord will raise up for you a prophet like me, okay, in the fact that he hears from God directly, okay, and this is that promised Messiah. And here is where Moses was given the ability. Do you remember the 3 signs that Moses, when he saw God at the burning bush, and he said, you trying to send me to the people of Israel, but they won't believe me. Who am I? I'm just a guy. They're not going to believe me when I come and tell them that I met with their God of their fathers and I've come to rescue you. So God gives him 3 signs to show to the people of Israel to validate his message. Do you remember any of those? No. The first one was the staff, to throw the staff down and it becomes a snake.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And then was the other one like blood to wine or wine to blood?
Well, those are that's confused slightly with the plagues that he did.
Oh.
But he did have 3 signs from God to validate his message to the people of Israel themselves. The first one was the staff that turned into a snake. The second one was he had the power of instant healing, where he would put his hand into his coat and then take it out, and it would be filled with disease and death and plague. And then he'd put it back in and pull it out and be instantly healed. An uncurable disease, instantly healed. So this is not we got to distinguish between what a physician can do, where you fix things that are broken, but a physician is almost up until this day now has never been able to fix the sight of a man born blind, or a man born deaf, or a man born crippled. They can fix things that have been broken, but if you were born that way, they can't touch it.
They can mend the wound, but they can't cure.
Exactly. And Moses was given the power, just like God had, to instantly cure disease from birth. And this is exactly what Peter and John did here in the temple, because they had received that same spirit, just like the 70 elders for Moses, just like the 70 disciples, the 12. They received that power and that spirit, and they could perform the same type of miracles. And it was specific for a reason. They didn't just go around doing miracles willy-nilly. They did exactly the Moses miracles, as a reminder that this is from God. Exactly the same miracles that Moses did.
It's been foretold, and we're just fulfilling it.
We're just fulfilling it. And so he began to walk and leap and jump into the, and he's obviously happy. And while he was, I'm on verse 11 now, while he was clinging to Peter and John, all the people ran together to them at the so-called portico of Solomon, full of amazement. But when Peter saw this, he replied to the people, "Men of Israel, why are you amazed at this? Or why do you gaze at us, as if by our own power or piety or holiness we had made him walk? The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of our fathers, has glorified his servant Yeshua, the one whom you delivered and disowned in the presence of Pontius Pilate when he had decided to release him. But you disowned the holy and righteous one, and asked for a murderer to be granted to you, but put to death the Prince of Life, the one whom God raised from the dead, a fact to which we are witnesses. And on the basis of faith in his name, it is the name of Jesus which has strengthened this man whom you see and know, and the faith which comes through him has given him this perfect health in the presence of you all.